Florida is not just a state. It is a glitch in the simulation. Where else can you get arrested for riding a manatee, fighting a swan, or trying to trade a live alligator for a 12-pack of beer? We have collected 101 absolutely true stories that prove the humidity down south definitely melts common sense. There is no logic here, just pure, unfiltered chaos. 1. A man in Hernando County dialed 911 because he needed a ride to the bar and did not want to pay for a taxi. He told dispatchers he had a medical emergency, but when the ambulance arrived, he just asked if they could drop him off at the local pub. The officers gave him a ride all right, but the destination was the county jail, which has a strictly zero alcohol policy. 2. One genius decided to drive his lawnmower down a major highway, weaving through traffic like he was mowing the median. When police finally pulled him over, he claimed he was just trying to beat the rush hour traffic by taking a shortcut. Turns out a top speed of 5 miles per hour is not a legal loophole, just a really slow way to ruin your driving record. 3. Most people express customer dissatisfaction with a bad review, but this guy had a different approach. After getting his drink order, he reached into his truck, grabbed a live 3-foot alligator, and hurled it through the drive-through window like a reptilian grenade. He was charged with assault with a deadly weapon. Apparently, the gator was not on the dollar menu. 4. Job hunting requires networking, but this is ridiculous. A burglar broke into a home and managed to steal some electronics, but he accidentally dropped a folder containing his full resume and ID on the kitchen floor. Police did not need Sherlock Holmes for this one. They just called the number listed under references. He literally provided a cover letter for his own arrest warrant. 5. Fast food cravings hit hard, but currency exchange rates are tricky. A man in Palm Beach tried to pay for his convenience store snacks, not with cash, but by offering the clerk a live iguana he was carrying. When the employee declined the trade, the man seemed genuinely confused. It is tough out there when your wallet bites back. 6. Emergencies are subjective. A frantic man called 911 multiple times because a seafood market refused to give him a refund for the clams he bought. He insisted this was a critical matter for law enforcement. The dispatcher disagreed. Instead of a refund, he got a charge for misusing the emergency system. That is a high price to pay for being salty about seafood. 7. Forget expensive gym memberships. A Central Florida man was spotted practicing his karate kicks on swans in a public park. Witnesses watched in horror as he screamed at the birds before unleashing a flurry of martial arts moves. The swans were physically unharmed, but the man's dignity is never going to recover from losing a fight to a bird. 8. Why walk when you can ride in style? A cowboy rode his horse directly inside a store to do some shopping. When the owner told him livestock was not allowed in the aisles, he refused to leave. Police arrested him for DUI on a horse, proving that in Florida, you can get a criminal record on literally anything with legs or wheels. 9. Usually the goal is to get out of prison. Not for this guy. He rammed his car into the front gate of a detention facility and climbed the fence just so he could hang out with his buddies who were already locked up. The deputies were happy to oblige. It is arguably the most aggressive RSVP to a social gathering in state history. 10. This might be the worst excuse for speeding ever recorded. When clocked doing over 100 miles per hour, a man told the officer he was not trying to race, he was just trying to air dry his car after a wash. Amazingly, the cop did not buy the physics lesson. It turns out aerodynamics is not a valid defense in traffic court. 11. A bank robber decided to be eco-friendly by recycling paper. He wrote his demand note on the back of his own deposit slip, which conveniently had his full name and home address printed on the other side. The tellers handed over the cash, then handed the note to the police. It is hard to remain anonymous when you literally autograph your crime. 12. Stealing a car is stressful, but calling customer service for help is a bold move. A thief could not get the stolen SUV to start, so he pushed the OnStar assistance button. The operator unlocked the car remotely, but also notified the police, who were waiting to provide some roadside assistance of their own, handcuffs included. 13. Arguments happen, but weaponizing fast food is a specific Florida specialty. A man started a food fight that turned legal when he slapped his brother in the face with a burrito during a heated debate. Police charged him with battery, proving that even delicious Mexican cuisine can be considered a deadly weapon if the velocity is high enough. 14. Breaking and entering usually involves stealing valuables. This intruder, however, broke into a house, made himself a sandwich, and then fell asleep while petting the homeowner's cat. When the owners woke up, he told them he was just looking for a cuddle buddy. The cat was unimpressed, and the judge was even less amused. 15. Pulling someone over requires authority, or at least a brain. A man installed red and blue lights on his sedan and tried to pull over an unmarked car for speeding. Unfortunately for him, the driver he targeted was a real detective. The awkward silence when they both flashed their badges was probably deafening. 16. There are tragedies, and then there is running out of chicken McNuggets. A woman called 911 3 times because the drive-thru told her they were serving breakfast only. She demanded officers force them to fry a burger. She got a police escort, but it was away from the Golden Arches and straight into a booking cell. 17. A man was found running down the highway completely naked, claiming he was traveling back in time to stop a war. When police caught him, he seemed genuinely surprised that his time warp velocity had not kicked in yet. Maybe he just forgot to pack his clothes for the journey to the past. 18. When the cops knock, hiding is a natural instinct. However, hiding under a blanket on the couch while your feet stick out is less than tactical. Police entered the room and stood there for a full minute, watching the lump breathe before tapping him on the shoulder. Not exactly a masterclass in stealth operations. 19. A shoplifter was caught trying to steal a chainsaw by stuffing it down his pants. The physics of this heist are baffling, not to mention the extreme danger to his personal anatomy. The security guard noticed the rigid, engine-shaped bulge immediately. It brings a whole new meaning to, is that a power tool in your pocket? 20. Ambition is good, but math skills are better. A man tried to buy a microwave with a photocopy of $1 million bill. When the cashier pointed out that $1 million bill does not exist, he argued that he was a billionaire and demanded change. He left with 0 microwaves and a very interesting police report. 21. A 30-year-old woman decided to relive her glory days by dressing up as a teenager and sneaking into a high school. She attended classes, ate lunch, and even recorded TikToks before administrators realized she had a mortgage and a driver's license. High school is a nightmare for most, but for her, it was apparently a vacation. 22. During a hurricane, officials usually advise evacuation. One local sheriff's office, however, had to issue a specific warning: do not shoot guns at the hurricane. Thousands had signed up to fire bullets into the storm to scare it away. Spoiler alert: bullets do not intimidate wind, they just come back down and threaten your neighbors. 23. Romantic gestures can backfire spectacularly. A man broke into a flower shop to steal a bouquet for his girlfriend to apologize for being broke. He left a trail of rose petals leading directly from the smashed window to his front door. Police followed the romantic breadcrumbs right to the happy couple. 24. A man blocked a busy intersection to perform a full yoga routine on the hood of his car. As horns honked and traffic backed up, he transitioned into downward dog, completely unbothered by the chaos. Police had to physically interrupt his zen to remind him that highways are not hot yoga studios. 25. When pulled over for erratic driving, a man quickly jumped into the passenger seat and put his dog behind the wheel. He seriously tried to convince the approaching officer that the dog was driving the whole time. The dog looked guilty, but since he could not reach the pedals, the human took the fall. 26. A young man dialed 911 in a blind rage, not because of a medical emergency, but because his mother had confiscated his video game controller for being too loud. He demanded deputies recover his stolen property, citing the Geneva Convention of Gaming Rights. The officers arrived not to raid his mom's room, but to explain that being grounded in your 20s is a lifestyle choice, not a legal crisis. 27. A would-be robber stormed into a convenience store wielding a large, floppy palm frond as his weapon of choice. He tried to intimidate the clerk by aggressively waving the leaf and demanding cash from the register. The cashier just stared at him in confusion until the leaf snapped in half against the counter. It is hard to be a menacing criminal mastermind when your weapon is biodegradable and provides shade. 28. An 18-year-old opened his own medical practice in a shed, complete with a stethoscope and a lab coat he bought online. He actually saw patients and gave physical exams before anyone realized he had not even graduated high school yet. The medical board shut down his Doogie Howser fantasy before he could prescribe candy corn as medicine, proving that confidence is the only degree you really need in Florida. 29. Police responded to reports of a violent brawl in a supermarket parking lot, only to find a single shirtless man throwing haymakers at thin air. He was ducking, weaving, and screaming insults at an invisible opponent he claimed had disrespected him near the shopping carts. Officers had to break it up because the humidity was apparently winning by a knockout, and the air remains undefeated. 30. A man tried to cross the Atlantic Ocean in a giant floating hamster wheel he built himself out of wire and buoys. The Coast Guard intercepted him 70 miles offshore, where he was running in place like a rodent on a mission. He refused to exit his bubble, screaming that he was walking to London. It is a bold travel strategy, but usually a plane ticket is cheaper and significantly less damp. 31. A scrapping enthusiast decided to steal an entire wooden telephone pole by strapping it to the roof of his small sedan. The pole was about 40 feet longer than the car, swinging wildly into oncoming traffic like a medieval jouster on a suicide mission. When pulled over, he claimed he found it by the road and thought it was trash. Because who does not accidentally misplace a massive piece of utility infrastructure? 32. A man declared war on an ATM because it dispensed too much cash during his transaction. Instead of celebrating the bank error, he punched the screen repeatedly, apologizing to the robot for its mistake and trying to feed the bills back in. Witnesses watched him argue with the machine for 10 minutes about financial ethics. It is the only recorded instance where someone fought a bank to give money back and still lost. 33. A homeowner was cited for doing heavy yard work in the nude, claiming the sun provided essential vitamins his clothes were blocking. Neighbors were less concerned with his vitamin D intake and more worried about where he was pointing his leaf blower. He told the cops he was just being one with nature, but the judge ruled that nature needs to wear denim shorts in a residential subdivision. 34. A driver decided the highway was too congested, so he turned onto the railroad tracks, convinced his sedan could function as a locomotive. He made it about 100 yards before the tires shredded and the car got stuck on the rails. He told police his GPS said to turn right, and he takes technology very literally. Siri might be smart, but she does not know how to drive a train. 35. During a routine traffic stop, a man was asked to show his driver's license. Instead of a plastic card, he handed the officer a half-eaten taco from his lunch bag. He seemed genuinely confused when the cop refused to scan the lettuce for biometric data. It is a delicious attempt at identity verification, but sadly, the Department of Motor Vehicles does not accept crunchy shells as valid documentation. 36. At a no questions asked gun buyback event, a man casually walked up to the table and placed a live surface-to-air missile launcher next to the rusty shotguns. Officers panicked, evacuated the area, and called specialists immediately. The man just wanted the $50 gift card promised for the exchange. That is a terrifyingly low exchange rate for something that absolutely should not be in anybody's garage. 37. A couple was arrested for selling golden tickets to heaven behind a pizza shop. They told buyers the tickets were made of solid gold, actually spray-painted wood, and guaranteed VIP entry through the pearly gates. They even claimed Jesus gave them the tickets personally over lunch. If the afterlife has a cover charge, you probably should not be buying the entry pass next to a dumpster. 38. A lawyer decided to protest the reopening of beaches during a health crisis by dressing as the Grim Reaper and stalking vacationers. He walked up and down the sand in a full black robe with a scythe, silently staring at sunbathers. It was an effective public service announcement, mostly because nothing ruins a tan faster than realizing death is checking out your sunscreen application. 39. A man attempted to rob a Waffle House using only his finger pointed inside his jacket pocket to simulate a gun. The waitress, who had clearly seen worse things during the night shift, told him to wait until she finished serving coffee. He awkwardly stood there for 5 minutes before leaving empty-handed. You know you have hit rock bottom when you get ignored during your own felony. 40. A fugitive called the local sheriff's department to ask if he had any outstanding warrants because he was tired of looking over his shoulder. The dispatcher politely confirmed he did and asked where he was so they could clear that up for him. He gave his address and the deputies arrived to provide the customer service he requested. It was the most convenient arrest in the history of law enforcement. 41. A man walked into a bank and attempted to cash a personal check written out for exactly $368 billion to start his own underwater record label. The teller, noticing that the account balance was zero and that billion was spelled wrong, politely declined the transaction. Instead of a massive withdrawal, he got a free ride in a cruiser, proving that while you should dream big, maybe start with a checking account that actually exists. 42. Late-night hunger can make people irrational, but this is next level. A customer called 911 twice because a fast food restaurant forgot to put the mild sauce packets in his bag. He told the dispatcher it was a tragedy and demanded an officer come to the scene to enforce condiment justice. He ended up with a misdemeanor charge, which is a lot of legal trouble for a few packets of spicy tomato paste. 43. Most burglars want to get in and out quickly, but the Goldilocks bandit had different priorities. After breaking into a family home, he didn't steal jewelry. Instead, he cooked himself a full breakfast, took a shower, and then fell asleep in the guest bedroom wearing the homeowner's pajamas. When the family returned, he was genuinely annoyed that they woke him up from his nap. He treated a felony burglary charge like a bad Airbnb experience. 44. A Florida man decided to steal a vending machine from an apartment complex, but he clearly skipped physics class. He managed to drag the heavy machine to the elevator, but then realized it wouldn't fit in his getaway vehicle, which was a convertible with the top down. He was found hours later, exhausted and defeated, sitting next to the machine in the parking lot, still trying to figure out how to strap a refrigerator-sized object into a passenger seat. 45. You have heard of snake on a plane, but what about python in a pants leg? A man raided a pet store and tried to smuggle a 2-foot python out by stuffing it down his trousers. The heist failed when the cold-blooded reptile decided it didn't like the warm environment and started biting him mid-walk. Security didn't even have to tackle him. They just waited for him to stop dancing around the parking lot. 46. A dedicated gamer was so focused on catching virtual creatures in Pokemon Go that he drove his sedan directly into the side of a police station. He got out of the car, phone still in hand, and told the stunned officers he was just trying to capture a rare digital monster that was spawning in the lobby. He caught the Pokemon, but he also caught a reckless driving charge, so it really depends on how much you value XP. 47. Identity theft usually involves high-tech hacking, but this criminal went analog. He tried to open a credit card account using a fake ID that was clearly a piece of cardboard with his photo glued onto it and his details written in crayon. The bank manager was so impressed by the lack of effort that he stalled the man until police arrived. It was less catch me if you can, and more arts and crafts time. 48. A burglar broke into a business in the middle of the night, only to realize too late that the business was an escape room. He successfully broke in, but the doors automatically locked behind him, and he couldn't solve the puzzles required to get back out. He eventually had to call 911 to save him from the riddles. The police officer who unlocked the door said it was the easiest game of hide-and-seek he had ever played. 49. A man posted an ad online offering to trade a duffel bag full of freshly stolen catalytic converters for a used Toyota Camry, insisting he was firm on the price and wanted a model from the late 90s. He claimed it was just modern recycling and called himself a businessman. Police arrived to discuss his supply chain in person, and the trade offer ended in handcuffs instead of a test drive. 50. A driver was pulled over for having a license plate that was just a handwritten note saying, "In transit." He spent 20 minutes explaining to the officer that he was a sovereign citizen, and that his Honda Civic was not a car, but a land vessel traveling on public currents. The judge later ruled that regardless of his nautical terminology, land vessels still need insurance, registration, and a captain who isn't completely delusional. 51. A man broke into a liquor store by climbing through the ceiling ventilation system, which seemed like a brilliant Mission Impossible plan until he fell through the ductwork and landed in a locked storage room. He was trapped there for 6 hours, surrounded by expensive scotch he couldn't open. The owners found him the next morning, sober, dusty, and begging to be arrested just so he could use a bathroom. 52. A local resident was arrested for practicing dentistry without a license after police found him pulling people's teeth in his kitchen using a pair of rusty pliers and a bottle of whiskey for pain management. He claimed he was providing a community service for people who hate waiting rooms. The health department shut down his clinic immediately, leaving his patients with a gap in their smiles and a very questionable story to tell. 53. A thief snatched a winning lottery ticket from a convenience store counter and ran out the door, thinking he had hit the jackpot. He returned to the same store 20 minutes later to cash it in, apparently forgetting that the clerk he just robbed was still standing there. The clerk scanned the ticket, confirmed it was a winner for $10, and then signaled the cop standing in the aisle behind him. 54. A man decided that the best way to get rid of a termite infestation in his rental home was to set the house on fire. He told the fire department that he figured if he burned the structure down, the bugs would have nowhere to live. Technically, his logic was sound. The termites were indeed gone, but the landlord was surprisingly ungrateful for the extreme pest control solution. 55. A confused driver led police on a low-speed chase through a golf course, driving his SUV over the greens and sand traps while screaming that he was late for tee time. He got stuck in a water hazard on the 9th hole and refused to exit the vehicle until he could finish the round. The only birdie he got that day was the view from the police helicopter hovering overhead. 56. A man tried to rob a GameStop while wearing a transparent plastic bag over his head as a disguise. The clerk could clearly see his face, his hair, and the confused expression he made when he realized he couldn't breathe. He passed out from lack of oxygen before he could even demand the cash, essentially defeating himself in the first round. 57. Police pulled over a golf cart driving down the interstate at 3 a.m. The driver, wearing only boxer shorts and a cowboy hat, claimed he was driving to Africa. When the officer pointed out the Atlantic Ocean was in the way, the man confidently said his cart had really good tires. Optimism is great, but geography always wins. 58. A woman called 911 to report that her drug dealer had sold her rock salt instead of crack cocaine. She wanted a refund or an arrest for fraud. The dispatcher sent a squad car to facilitate the complaint. She got her wish, the dealer was arrested, but she went right along with him for possession of drug paraphernalia. 59. A man broke into an alligator farm, not to steal money, but to jump into a pool with crocodiles because he claimed he was invincible. The confidence lasted until one of the animals proved it had not signed up for his motivational speech. He limped away with a very painful reality check and an arrest that probably felt like the calmer part of the night. 60. A thief stole a GPS tracking bracelet from a store shelf, apparently not understanding what the product actually does. He went home, put the bracelet on, and waited. Police tracked the signal directly to his living room sofa in under 10 minutes. It is rare when criminals literally broadcast their location to the authorities. 61. A man was arrested for calling 911 because his cat was acting weird and looking at him judgmentally. He demanded the police come interrogate the feline to find out what it knew. The responding officers confirmed the cat was just being a cat, but the owner was charged with misuse of emergency services. The cat remains silent on the matter. 62. A burglar got stuck in a chimney while trying to enter a home Santa style. He was wedged tight for hours, yelling for help until the homeowners woke up and called 911 because their fireplace was screaming. Firefighters eventually used dish soap and patience to slide him out like an extremely unwanted holiday decoration, straight into handcuffs. 63. A man tried to cash a fake check that he had printed on his home inkjet printer. The ink was still wet and smeared all over his hands when he handed it to the teller. He claimed it was a special new security feature from the bank. The only thing secure was the cell he slept in that night. 64. A driver crashed his car into a telephone pole and told police he was distracted because he was letting his parrot take the wheel. The bird was found uninjured in the passenger seat, looking innocent. The man insisted the parrot was a good driver but had trouble with the pedals. It is the classic blame the bird defense. 65. A man walked into a police station to apply for a job as a dispatcher, but he forgot he had a massive bag of weed sticking out of his shirt pocket. The sergeant conducting the interview noticed the smell immediately. He did not get the job, but he did get a very thorough tour of the holding cells. 66. A shoplifter tried to smuggle a frozen lobster out of a grocery store in his pants. The plan fell apart when the lobster thawed and started moving, pinching him in a very sensitive area. His frantic dance in the checkout aisle alerted security, who found the crustacean clinging to his dignity. 67. A man was caught riding a manatee in a restricted waterway, treating the endangered species like a jet ski. He yelled, "Yeehaw!" as Marine Patrol pulled up alongside him. He was charged with harassment of a protected animal. It turns out, sea cows are not public transportation, no matter how slow they swim. 68. A criminal mastermind tried to burn down a building to destroy evidence, but he used a bucket of water instead of gasoline by mistake. He stood there flicking his lighter at a wet wall for 5 minutes until police arrived. It was the most ineffective arson attempt in history, foiled by basic chemistry. 69. A man sued himself for hitting his own car while driving a rental vehicle. He claimed his insurance should pay him for his own negligence because he was a different person when he was angry. The judge dismissed the case immediately, ruling that you cannot be both the plaintiff and the defendant in your own stupidity. 70. A robber tried to look intimidating by wearing a full face, covering into a bank, but he forgot one tiny detail. It was a custom mask printed with his own face. It was meant for a costume party, but he decided it also looked criminal enough. The teller calmly handed over the money, then handed the security footage to police, who identified him in about 3 seconds. It is hard to be anonymous when your disguise is literally you. 71. A man on the Daytona Beach boardwalk tackled a person wearing a Minion mascot costume because he was convinced the character was mocking him. He body-slammed the foam yellow creature in front of terrified tourists, screaming about respect. Police had to explain that a costume with a permanently painted-on smile cannot physically mock anyone, but a grown man wrestling a cartoon character definitely looks ridiculous. 72. A heated domestic dispute broke out between two brothers over who got to sit in the front seat of the car. The problem was, they were both in their 40s. The driver, their mother, got so fed up with the bickering that she pulled over and called the cops on her own middle-aged children. Nothing screams failure to launch quite like having a sheriff's deputy assign seating arrangements for a minivan ride. 73. A driver was stopped after cruising down the highway on 3 tires and 1 bare metal rim, sending a shower of sparks 20 feet into the air. When asked if he noticed the problem, he told the officer he just turned up the radio volume to drown out the horrible screeching noise. Apparently, in his mind, if you cannot hear the mechanical failure, the car is technically fine. 74. A man walked into a convenience store, set a jar of loose coins on the counter, and announced he would be paying in pirate money. The coins were covered in sand, smelled like ocean water, and included a few bottle caps for bonus value. When the clerk refused, he argued that modern currency is a scam and demanded store credit for his treasure. Police arrived to explain that being salty does not make you a billionaire. 75. A driver tried to avoid a speeding ticket by solemnly handing the officer a get-out-of-jail-free card from a Monopoly board game. He kept it in his wallet specifically for this moment, hoping for a cop with a sense of humor. The trooper was amused by the audacity, but unfortunately, Parker Brothers board game rules do not apply to state traffic laws, and he still wrote the citation. 76. A hungry intruder broke into a closed fried chicken restaurant, fired up the industrial fryers, and made himself a full meal from scratch. He was caught because he passed out in a booth from a massive food coma before he could clean up the evidence. He was charged with burglary, but honestly, the kitchen staff was impressed by his breading technique. 77. A woman dialed 911 to complain that her local nail salon charged her too much for a manicure. She refused to leave the chair until an officer arrived to inspect her cuticles and adjudicate the price dispute. The deputy informed her that bad pricing is not a federal crime, but refusing to leave a business is called trespassing, and handcuffs ruin a fresh coat of polish. 78. A man was arrested for battery after he smacked his roommate across the face with a pool noodle during an argument, insisting it was non-lethal because it was foam. The roommate disagreed, mostly because the noodle had a plastic core, and the hit was delivered with full Olympic rage. The police report officially listed the weapon as a children's swim toy, which is a sentence no officer expects to type. 79. A fugitive tried to hide from police dogs by submerging himself in a pond and breathing through a hollow reed like a cartoon character. It might have worked if the pond wasn't crystal clear and only 2 feet deep. The officers just stood on the bank and watched him struggle with the reed until he stood up, wet, muddy, and completely humiliated. 80. A lottery winner spent his entire fortune on buying a monster truck and building a wrestling ring in his backyard, only to go broke in 3 months. He then tried to sue the lottery commission for giving him too much money too fast, claiming they should have known he was irresponsible. It is the first time someone has legally argued that being rich was a personal injury. 81. A man lost his driver's license but still had to get to work, so he was caught driving a battery-powered Barbie Jeep down a busy street. He was hunched over the tiny plastic steering wheel, knees hitting his chin, moving at a blistering 3 miles per hour. Police didn't even know what to charge him with, so they just escorted him and his pink plastic ride off the road. 82. Thieves managed to steal an entire 50-foot mobile home while the owners were out to dinner. They simply hooked it up to a truck and drove away with the living room still inside. Police found the house 3 counties over, parked in an open field. It takes a special kind of ambition to steal the whole building instead of just the TV inside. 83. A man was hospitalized after he tried to kiss a nurse shark on the lips for a dare, because apparently peer pressure works underwater too. The shark was not interested in romance, latched on, and instantly ended the love story. It was a painful lesson that wildlife does not care about your dares, your confidence, or your TikTok-worthy moment. 84. A criminal live-streamed himself on Facebook while robbing a house, narrated the entire event, and even shouted out his friends watching the stream in the comments. He essentially created a documentary of his own felony in real time. The police didn't have to investigate. They just subscribed to his channel and waited for him to log off so they could pick him up. 85. A man broke into a Planet Fitness at 3 a.m., not to steal cash, but to get a free workout. He was found running on a treadmill completely naked, claiming he wanted to feel the burn without restrictive clothing. The gym has a strict no-judgment zone policy, but they definitely made an exception for this guy. 86. Florida man. Headlines are legendary, but this one is pure chaos. A guy tried to pay for his drive-through order with a bag of weed, and when the cashier refused, he insisted it was legal tender from the future. He sat at the window arguing macroeconomics until the cops arrived to explain that the future still accepts Visa, not Ziploc bags of earth. 87. You'd think hiding in a swamp would be a good escape plan, but not when you forget about the residents. A fugitive jumped into a retention pond to evade police, only to come sprinting back out 10 seconds later screaming about an alligator. He literally ran straight into the handcuffs of the officers, deciding that prison was a much safer option than being a reptile's lunch. 88. It started as a normal traffic stop until the driver handed the officer a laminated library card and insisted it was a personal travel license. He argued that books are knowledge, knowledge is power, and power is permission to drive. When asked for registration, he produced a receipt for a smoothie and claimed it was proof of citizenship. The officer towed the car, and the driver learned that public roads are not a debate club. 89. Imagine waking up to find a stranger doing your laundry. A homeowner found a man in his utility room, folding clothes and whistling a tune. The intruder said he just wanted to help out and thought the door was open for a reason. He was arrested for breaking and entering, but honestly, finding a burglar who does chores is kind of a mixed blessing. 90. Some excuses are bad. This one is anatomically impossible. A shoplifter caught with a frozen turkey under his shirt told security he grew it as a tumor. He stuck to the medical miracle story even as the tumor started sweating condensation onto his belly. It takes a special kind of confidence to claim your body naturally produces butterball poultry. 91. A man decided to take his pet goat for a walk inside a department store. When employees asked him to leave, he claimed the goat was a service animal trained to detect bad vibes. The goat proceeded to eat a display of silk scarves, proving that its only service was destruction. He was escorted out, but the goat left a 5-star review for the tasty fabric. 92. In a bold display of multitasking, a driver was pulled over for shaving his face with an electric razor, eating a bowl of cereal, and driving with his knees, all at 70 miles per hour. He told the trooper he was simply optimizing his morning routine. The ticket for reckless driving probably ruined his efficiency stats for the week. 93. A woman called the police to report a theft, claiming someone had stolen her invisible car. She described the make and model in detail but struggled to explain the paint color. Officers spent 20 minutes looking for tire tracks of a vehicle that didn't exist before realizing she needed a doctor, not a detective. It is hard to issue an APB for thin air. 94. A man tried to smuggle a monkey onto a commercial flight by dressing it in a diaper and calling it his baby. The plan fell apart when the baby climbed up the seat and started stealing peanuts from other passengers. The airline was not amused, and the man was grounded permanently. Turns out, primates make terrible passengers, even in economy class. 95. Trying to fake your own death is a classic move, but you have to commit. A man staged a drowning accident to avoid court, leaving his clothes and ID on the beach. He was caught 3 days later when he posted a selfie on Instagram from a resort, holding a margarita with the caption, "Living my best life." The judge liked the post, then issued a warrant. 96. A burglar broke into a closed donut shop, ate so many glazed donuts he got dizzy, and then tried to hide by lying face down on the kitchen floor like a dramatic movie corpse. Police followed the silent alarm, found him covered in powdered sugar, and woke him up with the saddest sentence imaginable. "Sir, you are under arrest and you smell like sprinkles." He went down for burglary and for disrespecting basic self-control. 97. A man sued the local weather station for predicting sun when it rained, claiming the forecast caused him emotional distress and ruined his hair. He demanded compensation for his hair gel and a formal apology from the meteorologist. The case was thrown out, but you have to admire the commitment to a good hair day. 98. A driver was caught speeding down the highway with a full-size skeleton in the passenger seat so he could use the HOV carpool lane. He had even dressed the bones in a hoodie and sunglasses to make it look real. The officer gave him points for creativity but still wrote him a ticket for driving with a passenger who had clearly been dead for a while. 99. A man tried to rob a bank by handing the teller a note written on a paper plate. The wind blew the plate out of his hand and across the lobby floor before she could read it. He chased the rolling plate like a cartoon character while everyone watched. He left in shame without a single dollar, defeated by a gentle breeze. A Florida man was arrested for trying to barbecue on the median of a busy highway during rush hour. He had a grill, a cooler, and a lawn chair set up next to the passing cars. He told police he just wanted to feed the commuters. It was a nice gesture, but serving hot dogs in traffic is generally frowned upon by the Department of Transportation. 101. And finally, the ultimate Florida man story. A guy got bitten by a shark, walked out of the ocean, bandaged it up himself, and went straight to a bar to brag about it. He refused to go to the hospital because he didn't want to lose his spot at happy hour. That is the spirit of Florida. Survive the danger, ignore the medical advice, and prioritize the beer. We just saw the elite tier of bad decisions. Now, be honest, if you ended up on the news in Florida tomorrow, what would the headline say? Local man fights a vending machine? Woman tries to bribe cop with pizza? Drop your own hypothetical crime headline in the comments below. I will be reading the craziest ones. Hit the like button if you think you could outrun the cops, and subscribe before they catch you.